but we have 100 participants in the registered list of registered participants. So, but we have to start because people are on time for the session. So you can start recording the session, please, Thomas, so that we can share with those that could not join today. So I will share my screen. Okay, so thank you very much for joining this session that is convened by the IMPACCT Working Group on 5 things you need to know about high-level policy recommendations. The IMPACCT Working Group contributes actively to the development and the review of relevant high-level policy and policies and international legal frameworks as they relate to the importation and customs clearance of humanitarian aid. Contributing to the development or revision of international conventions, instruments and tools give us an opportunity to advocate to governments the importance of building national capacity and capability to cope with a large influx of humanitarian aid. The second objective is to instill predictability in the end-to-end process of importing emergency relief. Then today, instead of making presentations of all the existing tools and instruments, the members of the IMPACCT Working Group have decided to extract from these instruments 5 topics and look at what it addresses and how these issues are addressed. So we have shared with you on the website of the HNPW the list of policy recommendations that already exist, but we can share it in the chat as well. And the 5 topics that we have extracted from these policy recommendations are, first of all, the key role of the government in the coordination and collaboration with other partners. The second topic is the immediate response priorities and how this topic is addressed in these instruments, the list of essential goods, the capacity building, and the importation of telecommunication equipment. In another session this morning, we have discussed the importation of medicines and medical equipment, and the record will be soon available and will be online if you had no chance to contribute and participate to the session. So without wasting time, I'm going to present the first topic, which is collaboration and coordination. This topic is recurrent in the international instruments, and the coordination role of the affected country is key. So the first element that is covered in these documents is the recommendation to put in place mechanisms to request or accept international assistance. There are situations when the government launch a request for international assistance. We have seen that in Lebanon, for example, and sometimes they don't, but they accept the offers that are made directly from governments or through the UN resident coordinator. The second aspect that is covered in most of the documents are the recommendation to implement a strong legal framework or to issue a decree immediately after the emergency. And in these decrees or legal provisions, there is a need to include specific provisions for assisting actors. Business as usual should not be an option in these exceptional circumstances. In terms of coordination and collaboration, the establishment of a one-stop shop or an emergency operation center is key to ensure that all the cross-border agencies and regulatory agencies are at the entry points and operate from there. We will address that in the next presentation with Lance. In terms of bureaucratic impediments, the documentation should be limited to a minimum to facilitate and speed up the importation and customs clearance processes. And last but not least, we all know that when affected by a disaster, governments have to protect their borders from prohibited goods and activities, but they must at the same time ensure a speedy and efficient importation of disaster relief goods so that your operations are not at stake. They have in place a strong mechanism to control what enters their country. Therefore, there is a need to balance the risk mitigation and the urgent needs of disaster affected people. These points are key to the success of humanitarian operations, and most of these recommendations and provisions are included in the international conventions, as well as in the immediate response priorities, which will be presented by Lance Thompson, who is Economic Affairs Officer at the Secretary of IMPACCT UNEC. Lance, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Virginie. And I'd like to stress that this is what I'll present is reflected in what we call recommendation number 44 on disaster relief. This has just been approved by our plenary and will be published officially on our website in about 2 months from now. I don't see the slides anymore. But this was done largely in cooperation with OCHA and the IMPACCT Group and all of the experts who are on this call and speaking during this call as well. So it's a very collaborative work that's been done. So on the first slide, I think that when we're talking about the immediate response priorities, the point of entry is essential. And this is what we've outlined in recommendation number 44, that it's important to ensure that the critical entry points are operational so that assistance can move in. In the recommendation, we outline airport, but it can also be land border crossings or maritime ports. And then afterwards, as Virginie, you mentioned, the one-stop shop is quite important. And this is a concept which is rather old. It's a physical location where multiple agencies will be physically represented and where a trader can do all of their operations. And so the choice of the location of a one-stop service will be essential to ensure that it's appropriate for the aid coming in and the different actors who would be participating. And that the representation of all pertinent governmental regulatory agencies are present within the one-stop shop. And in conjunction with this is coordinated border management, because not only would they physically all be in a single location to help the entry of goods and streamline the processes, but there also has to be a level of coordination between the various agencies. And this would include things like the coordination of duty, tax, tariff, and other fee exemptions and waivers, licensing, coordination on temporary admission, coordination on specialized relief equipment, which could include telecommunication equipment, medical supplies, equipment and devices, transport assets, search and rescue equipment and animals, or emergency food. And then would have to have also in place the pre-arrival information and processing, if that is something that is possible, so that the goods can be expedited when it is arriving at the border. And also the eligible assisting actors are quite important in the times of crisis, which of course the IMPACCT Group already knows. And so there has to be an emergency registration process that could be put into place, and the one-stop shop could be a place where that could be done. On the next slide, looking at some of the key priorities, you already touched upon the emergency decree, if laws don't exist already. facilitation of cross-border movement of disaster relief, and Vera will speak about the different goods that would be concerned, to apply predictable and pragmatic controls, and to have fallback procedures that would be in place. Then another topic which is close to our heart within IMPACCT is the notion of single window. And this is quite important for border processing. And when we're looking at this coordination and collaboration between government agencies, when a single window has been put into place, that collaboration is something that's already pre-existing. And so it can also help when there's an onset of a sudden disaster, and then also helping with the business continuity management. So I think those are some of the key priorities and perspectives from the point of view of immediate response. And then afterwards, these are some of the resources where we can find more information about this. So there's the sections within Recommendation 44 on cross-border facilitation measures for disaster relief, which, as I said, has been approved by our plenary. So it is available on our website as a plenary document, but we're reformatting it as a publication. So in about a few weeks from now, it'll be available on our website in its final place. There's a guideline for domestic facilitation and regulations and of international disaster relief, known as the IDRL guidelines. The resolution on the role of customs in natural disaster relief from the WCO, and of course Annex J5 of the revised Kyoto Convention of the WCO. Thank you. I hope that was in the time.
Yes,
as you said, I should be brief.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like also to take this opportunity to thank Kathy Harris, who is online with us today and assist us a lot and did a tremendous work last year to finalize the drafting of this recommendation 44. So thank you very much to you. You are online, and I would like to thank you again on behalf of the IMPACCT Working Group, and also my behalf in assisting us in this important work. So thank you very much. Next thing you need to know is about the list of essential goods. And I'm going to give the floor to Mrs. Vera Filipova, a technical officer in the World Customs Organization. Vera, over to you.
Thank you very much, Virginie. Today I will answer 3 questions with regard to the list of essential goods. But before that, I would like to point out that when it comes to essential goods, equipment, and services, there is no universal, internationally recognized definition, and there is little guidance on how to establish this list of essential goods, equipment, and services. To remedy this situation, in the last year or so, we have worked on providing guidance to our members and stakeholders. In the WCO Secretariat, the WCO stands for the World Customs Organization, we developed a Secretariat note on how to establish and utilize such list of essential goods, and the matter is also covered by the UNEC Recommendation 44 that Lance just spoke about. The first question is when the list of essential goods should be established. As per the international tools and high-level policy recommendations, immediately after the onset of a major disaster and after consultation with relevant authorities, the Disaster Management Authority shall make a determination based on initial estimates of needs and damage as to whether domestic capacities are likely to be sufficient to attend to the needs for disaster relief and initial recovery assistance. This determination may also be made at the discretion of the relevant disaster management authority before the onset of an imminent major disaster. In the event that the domestic needs the domestic capacities would not be sufficient to cover the needs, the NDMA or the equivalent national authority recommends to the President or Prime Minister to request international disaster assistance or to accept such assistance. This is still in the when question. And then if the international assistance is to be accepted, the NDMA comes out with a list of essential goods, equipment, and services that are required. If the NDMA considers that international assistance is not required, this decision can be reviewed and rescinded based on updated information about the needs. In this context, it should be noted that the list of required goods and equipment and services depends very much on the type of the disaster, the certain characteristics of the affected country, such as climate, local culture and religion, structure of the economy, etc., and the domestic response capacities. Global disruptions such as the COVID-19 pandemic can add additional factors for consideration and may take the list of essential supplies beyond the normally expected relief consignment. For example, in the COVID-19 pandemic, some of our members included raw materials and inputs as essential goods so that their economy can keep going and they can produce the necessary essential goods locally. What is the role of customs in this process? In the context of coordinated border management, the role of customs in disaster relief should be recognized and the customs administration should be adequately integrated as part of the preparedness and response mechanisms. What is also very important is to make the list of essential goods, equipment and services publicly available. This is to the benefit of all supply chain actors. And we come to the third question, which is on the next slide. Why do we need such a list and how such a list can contribute in the response to the natural or other disaster? The purposes that such lists can serve is first to provide clarity to the assisting international actors as to the needs of the disaster-affected countries. Thus, it can contribute to avoiding the so-called unsolicited bilateral donations that often cause issues such as blocking of much-needed storage space, storage costs, and disruption to the humanitarian supply chains. Second purpose that it can serve as a tool to prioritize the customs clearance of the items on the list and accord to them facilitative treatment, such as clearance outside the designated hours of business or away from customs offices. The prioritization can be done based on harmonized system codes or tariff codes of the goods. This is one option. Another option is based on customs procedure codes, or the third option is based on approved organizations importing the goods. After setting up the list by the government, it is recommended that the Customs Administration supplements the list of essential goods with information on the customs tariff code of the goods on the list. The third objective that such a list can serve is to serve as a basis for decisions to waive import duties and taxes, any economic import prohibitions or restrictions with respect to the goods on the list. And of course, it can serve as a combination of the three purposes. These were the three questions that I wanted to address with regards to the list of essential goods. Back to you, Virginie.
Thank you very much, Viera. If you have questions or comments, we will come back to that at the end, and we have a discussion about these documents. So the next speaker is for the thing number 4. We need to know. My screen doesn't want to change. Voila, it's on capacity building, and I will hand over the floor to Gudrun van Potterbelk from OSCE. She is the co-author of the self-assessment tool that OSCE has developed. Gudrun, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Virginie. I hope all of you can hear me very well. Just to correct that, I'm not working with the OSCE. I'm having worked for the OSCE in terms of this tool, but Inetta, our colleague, is the Associate Border Security Officer and who is online here as well. If you have any further questions or details on the OSCE. But I'm happy here to present to you capacity building, the topic and the importance of capacity building from the perspective of the OSCE, of course. I hope all of you know the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. It's an organization, I think it's the first time the OSCE has contributed to the Humanitarian Partnership and Networking Weeks. And that is actually a rather simple explanation, because the OSCE is really focused on a comprehensive security mandate across its focus area and its 57 participating states. Now, if it comes to border security, of course, there we have a common interest, and that is also where we meet and how it explains our involvement here today. Because we have noticed in the work of border security and strengthening borders, strengthening capacities of border officials, we noticed a couple of years ago in 2012 that there was really a need to link the two worlds of border security, to link with disaster response and disaster emergency as such. We noticed the need to strengthen the capacities, but also strengthen the awareness of those border officials, what to do in case of cross-border implications of disasters, of crisis, and of conflicts, not to have them surprised as it has happened in the past. So that brings us to the element of capacity building, of course. And in our view, a very first step that is needed is to do a proper assessment, so, to know what you are to be prepared for, to know what you're missing, to know where you have to strengthen your capacities or, just build up your capacities, because there is nothing in place so far. So in 2012 and then 2013, we prepared the first version of the self-assessment tools for nations to increase preparedness for cross-border implications of crisis. It is primarily aimed for our participating states, but it is also open, of course, for any other nation that likes to use it. Last year, there was a need identified to update the tool. Since 2012, there were, you can say the least that, there has been some changes internationally in terms of migration crisis, pandemic, but also the need to strengthen a gender aspect. So in 2020 and in 2021, because the new tool will be published just in a few weeks, there is a very fresh version of the tool available. If you can give me the next slide, Virginie. Yeah, because what is the tool about? It is, the rationale is indeed that border officials, just as it has been mentioned before in the discussions, border officials are often the first to be confronted with those cross-border implications of crisis. However, they are not always well prepared. So what did we do in 2012 and 2020 was not to reinvent the wheel, because there's already so much out there. But we saw a need to point the border agencies and border-related agencies to existing tools of the humanitarian and civil protection world, to whom they may not have been linked before. So the tool is actually a compilation of existing tools of work of IFRC, of WCO, of UNEC, and very many other actors that were very grateful to contribute to the tool and to be willing to share their products, with us, so we can incorporate them in the tool as such. The tool runs through a number of questions. So the agencies that you see listed there, the emergency management officials, border officials, other ministries, they can just take it and run with it. Like it asks question like, do you have this in place? Yes or no? Do you have this in place? Yes or no? So it is organized according to recipient states, so affected states, transit states, sending states, and also has an aspect on early recovery. And the big advantage, of course, is that this tool is an entry point. It is complementary to other policies that are out there. And that takes me to the next slide and then also to the next steps. Because I said the assessment is only a first step. And afterwards, there is more work to be done if you want to do proper capacity building and where other existing tools can be used for that purpose. So on top of a self-assessment tool, another step to be considered is, to consider implementation of international guidelines. We just have been talking about the WCO guidelines as such, to really fill the gaps in advance of crisis as such. Another step, the IDRL guidelines have also been mentioned, to review the legal preparedness. It is also an element of capacity building and making sure that you're prepared, if something is going to happen. Step 4 there is about training events as such, the capacity building that we often think about here, but the proper training events for cross-border agencies, where there's a number of tools again that are out there, the IMPACCT e-learning program, ITU training course, but also a number of other humanitarian learning material that is out there and that is ready to be used and to be incorporated in training for cross-border agencies and border security agencies as such. And then the final tool that we've seen in our experience is again to run a proper simulation exercise. And if you allow me there to go back again to the tool where you can actually take it, and use it as a basis for your simulation exercise. That is the self-assessment tool, right? It's about transferring the ownership back to the people who will actually have to do the work as well to make sure that they are properly prepared. So these are just a few reflections on capacity building, mentioning towards existing tools, with of course an emphasis on the OSCE self-assessment tool. And I think Anessa and myself, we are more than happy to answer any questions if you have after the presentation. Virginie, back to you.
Thank you very much, Gudrun. It is very, very interesting and comprehensive. Maritza, the next speaker, will talk about the ITU training course on developing national emergency telecommunication plan. And I would like to say a quick word about the IMPACCT e-learning program we have just launched during the HNPW last week. We also have in this course, we have a module on high-level policy recommendations, because logisticians in the field, they need to understand that what is requested by the customs administration or cross-border agencies do not come from nowhere. There are organizations such as WCO, the voice of the customs administrations, and others that are developing guidelines and guidance, such as UNEC that we have discussed with Lance, and member states decide on these provisions. And then member states do implement these provisions at the operational level. So what they do is really built on what they think should be included in the international conventions. And this is why our work in this aspect is very important, because we can instill predictability, we can influence and explain to member states that in the field, we cannot, when there is an emergency, we cannot do business as usual. So there is a need to adjust that. So we also include this in the e-learning program. And this is why this session is important to understand that it does not come from nowhere, and that instruments and tools exist based on the recommendations we do sometimes, and also on the decisions from the member states. So it's an important aspect of our work. So the next speaker is Maritza Doris Delgado. She's the program officer in ITU, International Telecommunication Union. So Maritza, over to you. Unmute, Maritza, we don't hear you. Are you with us? Thomas, is Maritza with us, or does she have a connection?
Thank you. I didn't have access to the microphone. So thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, so I am going to talk about the important topic on importation of telecommunications equipment. So next slide, please. So we all know that when disasters strike, the most critical tool that we need is telecommunications, because we need telecommunications to coordinate all the response efforts at a national level. But how we are going to coordinate if we don't have any mobile networks and services up and running? So this is why it is critical that we must ensure importation of telecommunications equipment in the aftermath of disasters. Why? Because we need to reestablish these telecommunications tools in order to help humanitarian activities and recovery efforts on the ground, not only between national stakeholders, but also between UN organizations that will support the government and the country in the aftermath of disasters. So can you go to the next slide? So we know that this is critical, but most of the time we have a lot of issues importing this equipment. We know, and most of the presence here have heard about the Tampere Convention, which is the only treaty on the provision of telecommunication resources for disaster mitigation and relief operations. But we have heard of it, but we do not have a lot of information on the benefits of this Tampere Convention. Although the Tampere Convention came into force in 2005 with 30 countries that followed the ratification, up to date, we only have 49 countries that have ratified this convention. So we see that there is a need to raise awareness on the benefits of this convention. This convention not only facilitates the deployment or importation of telecommunications equipment and of course human resources that come along with it, but also creates a mechanism for establishing model agreements at a national level and also at international level. It puts in place a structure for managing requests for assistance. And one of the most important things that this convention has is that it protects the interest of the beneficiary countries. So what does this mean? That most of the time, countries do not know about what will be the process importing this equipment, and they will think that importing equipment will mean to lose power, and they will not have control of what the telecommunications equipment will do into the country. But this convention really protects the interests of the countries. Why are we only having 49 countries so far? Lack of awareness and knowledge about the benefits that I mentioned. I didn't go into deep details because we don't have a lot of time, but it also takes long ratification processes. But this can be solved at a national level if we have some coordination mechanisms to implement the Tampere Convention. And also having 49 countries that have ratified the convention doesn't mean that they have implemented and activate the convention at a national level. So most of the countries that have ratified the convention, they must have it, but they don't have implemented. And how can we overcome these process, these challenges? And next slide, please. So to overcome the challenges, we must implement these at a national level. But we cannot do this alone. The Tampere Convention is not only about, and that doesn't only involve the telecommunications sector, the regulatory organization, or the Ministry of Telecommunications. It involves everyone at a national level involved in disaster management. And most of the time, the office in charge of implementing this is the office or the Department of International Affairs. So we can see here that this is a multi-stakeholder engagement. And as mentioned before, ITU to help countries be better prepared and more resilient, and also including the Tampere Convention, we have developed the guidelines for national emergency telecommunication plans. And the national emergency telecommunication plans, as mentioned before, these plans really set out a strategy and enable and ensure telecommunications availability during all phases of the disaster management. And these plans promote coordination across all levels of government, including customs authorities, and also between the public and private organizations, including NGOs and UN organizations as well, and of course within communities at risk. Because when we are developing these plans at a national level, it's not only one entity involved. It's a multi-stakeholder approach in order for us to set up a national strategy that will be benefit for everyone. The national emergency telecommunication plans also provide a governance framework of roles and responsibilities. So knowing and participating in the development of the plans, where all organizations will know which are the responsibilities that they undertake in all phases of the disaster management. And this includes the Tampere Convention, because then we will have a national approach. So this implementation process will not take a long more time that it is needed, because we will follow up, all the organizations will follow up and will set up the Tampere Convention at a national level. You know that provisions of importation of telecommunications equipment, of course, are also included in the high-level policy recommendations that we are talking about, but also are mentioned in the IDRL guidelines, UNEC and CBM. And we see that importation of telecommunications equipment is critical. And ITU is working very hard to support countries in this, and to have countries become more resilient in the telecommunication aspect. And we have developed the guidelines for developing national emergency telecommunication plans, and also an online training tool for these. And this training tool is available for everyone. It's available in the ITU Academy platform. It's free of charge. And the good thing about this online training module is that it provides a step-by-step process on how to develop these plans at a national level. But to complement this work, we have also developed the Tampere Convention training course. This training course provides highlights the benefits and provides more information about the Tampere Convention in a very easy manner, step by step, and provides as well a lot of examples on how countries have ratified this convention at a national level. And also what we have done is to develop an online training course to develop simulation exercises. And these simulation exercises really help us to test if all the strategies, plans that we have in place are ready to be used in the aftermath of disasters. It's a very simple course, and it also provides a lot of information on how these courses should be developed at a national level, involving different stakeholders working in disaster management. And this includes the customs authorities, this includes the ICT private sector, the government entities, and also includes the communities which are at risk, that we need also to support in the aftermath of when disasters strike. So this is the work that we are doing from ITU, and we are encouraging each one of you to go to the ITU Academy platform and find these online training courses, so you can also benefit from these. The good thing is that they are free of charge. We can support as well, and we can work together with all of the UN organizations. And I think IMPACCT is one of the best groups that we can support and work together to be ready to import telecommunications equipment when disasters strike, and not only telecommunications equipment, but all the necessary tools that we need to support countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maritza. Thank you very much to all the speakers and the panelists. As you have seen, we have extracted from these documents the 5 main things you should know, but there are a lot of other topics that are included in the different conventions and in international instruments. So you are more than welcome to have a look at those. We have shared a compilation of the tools on the website, and we can share it again after the meeting by email. These tools exist. As I said in the beginning, we are participating to the revision process when these organizations have a program to revise those. But we need now to look at how to implement these tools, and we need to look at what is missing. So I would like to open the floor now to the different participants to discuss what we are missing in these tools, and as well how you can support the implementation of the tool. I see that online we have several governments. If they want to take the floor and raise your hands or ask the question in the chat. Otherwise, I see that there are some questions in the chat. Sorry, I'm going to look at it. In the meantime, please, we have Paul. Do you want to take the floor? Over to you.
Yeah. Well, it was actually just an observation from the first slide on the ITU session for who communication is important. It's also for the beneficiaries, which were
we
not
don't hear you very well. Can you speak a bit closer to the microphone, please?
Okay. On the first slide of the ITU presentation, there were a couple of targets why this was important, but I missed actually the victims or the beneficiaries of disaster response on that slide.
Maritza, any comments?
I lost the communication, so I couldn't hear the complete question. So the question is that?
Actually, just an observation that having good and immediate availability of telecoms is also a good lifeline for the victims of the disaster. And they were not mentioned on your first slide.
And in the first slide, it mentions that, of course, it's with communities which are at risk. And this is something that we always work and mention, because at the end, they also need to have communication so they can be communicated with their families, their loved ones. So this is something that we do, and I think it is in my first slide.
Okay.
But thank you.
All right.
This one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, it is true, but I did mention that communities need also telecommunications.
All right.
Okay.
But thank you. Yes, of course, this is something that we always emphasize, that it's not only for us for coordination, but also for communities.
Okay, thank you very much. When we developed the IMPACT policy recommendation, we work with UNCTAD, and I see that Mr. Konstantin Schuta is online with us, and we had initiated discussions on how to implement Can you please share your views on how these conventions and high-level policy recommendation could be implemented? Over to you.
Thank you, Virginie. Yes, in mostly we are looking for the last couple of years, I would say, how to develop an IT tool as to facilitate the implementation of international conventions and to support all the actors, national disaster management authorities, customs and other border authorities and humanitarian actors to collaborate and to share information. We have been looking mainly how to further improve the current legislative framework as to provide clear indications to all the actors, all the stakeholders, as regards what type of facilitations and simplifications are applicable. And we, as we can see from the latest IMPACCT recommendations, we have a clear distinctions in this umbrella recommendation, what kind of facilitations and simplifications are applicable for during a natural disaster, what kind of facilitations and simplifications are applicable during pandemics. We don't provide the same, or we don't need to have in place the same type of simplifications and facilitations for all the types of events. We have been also discussing within our group about the needs to have this list of essential goods. Of course, the exact list of needs is established as soon as the request for international assistance it's submitted. However, we have advised national disaster management authorities, customs authorities, particular in countries, disaster-prone countries, knowing from previous events what kind of relief items may be requested during similar events, to prepare this kind of list, so to have the list of relief items, which an indicative list of relief items which may be required during this type of event, and to select from that indicative list exactly the relief items, the essential items which are requested in that particular situation. We have been discussing also within our group about the fact that we have to have the mapping between the description of the relief items and the respective HS codes to support both humanitarian actors and customs authorities humanitarian actors on one hand to be notified exactly what kind of relief items are requested, and for customs authorities to automate the processes. But we have been discussing about how to help them to do this mapping with commodity codes at the national level or with the HS code in order to facilitate the reuse of data. And while we have discussed that during a national disaster, relevant actors can apply for a tariff classification or can be supported by the national customs administrations in case of pandemics, which are global, we have to find the right mechanisms to get in contact with World Customs Organization in order to support globally this effort of mapping essential list of items with the corresponding HS codes. Individual organizations cannot go directly to get in contact with WCO. They have to go through the National Customs Administration. So we have to find the right mechanism in case of pandemics to get in touch with organizations such as WCO and to support them in doing this mapping exercise. Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you, Kosti. There is a question to Maritza, but I think the question is to all of us. Is to Maritza first in the chat. Given the number of signatories to the temporary convention, it seems that many communication authorities are not aware of this convention. What plans are in place to advocate for this? Maritza, you want to take this?
Yes, and this is, thank you very much for the question. And this is the reason why we have developed this online training module on the importance and benefits of the Tampere Convention to help countries to know more about the Tampere Convention. And also we are developing a national workshops, inviting all national organizations involved in disaster management. And when I mean involved in disaster management is the telecommunication, the regulatory authority, the national disaster management offices, the humanitarian entities at a national level to come together and discuss the ways forward to have a national plan for emergency telecommunications and the critical role that the Tampere Convention has and the need to implement this at a national level. The convention is very simple and way forward, but not everyone understands what it means. This is the reason why these online training course really provides a very good examples on what all the articles mean and what what the country needs to do and how to implement. Countries really lack of knowledge on this convention, but we are working towards increasing this knowledge and build capacity at a national level to implement the treaty as soon as possible. Over to you.
Thank you, Maritza. It is more or less the same thing with the other conventions and instruments. I don't know whether Viera wants to take the floor or to add what I'm going to say, but there are projects. There was a project in 2014 funded by the government of the Netherlands for for 6 countries in West Africa, and the objective was to look at the legal framework and also to make recommendations on how to amend the law and also to write SOPs. So with these objectives in mind, WCO and I supported these projects. We raised awareness to these countries that were affected by Ebola, and then they have drafted SOPs that was very useful for the current pandemic on the current pandemic. And there is again today another project with WCO. Perhaps I can give the floor to Viera. Funded by the government of Japan, where we also raise awareness. Viera, do you want to take the floor on this?
Thank you, Virginie. Indeed, these are capacity building projects. The one that you mentioned, funded by Japan, the so-called COVID-19 project, it has also regional outreach, so it is reaching out to all our members. Unlike the CRED project in West Africa that had only 6 beneficiary countries. And the provisions on relief consignments are in our flagship convention, the revised Kyoto Convention. And we are providing massive capacity building support to our members to accede to the convention, and the number of contracting parties is constantly growing. It is close to 130 now. The structure of the convention is such that specific annexes are not obligatory for accession, so the number of contracting parties that have accepted the specific annexes is less much less than 130, but still the revised Kyoto Convention is one of our flagship conventions, and we are constantly providing support to our members to accede and implement the provisions of the convention.
Okay, thank you. There is also another ongoing project funded by the Inter-American Development Bank for the Americas and Caribbean, and based on the international instruments, a toolkit will be created for the countries in the region, and contingency plans and IADB and consultants will assist these countries to draft contingency plans for that. Of course, it will be based on all these international conventions. Thus, the importance of having an international conventions that includes the provisions that we would like to see as humanitarian actors to make sure that these are implemented at the national level. We have a session in Spanish tomorrow for the countries in the region that will look at how the legal framework has assisted the countries during the hurricanes that struck the region, Honduras, etc., at the end of 2020, and how to operationalize the legal framework and all the tools that we have presented today. So there are some projects and initiatives that exist currently to implement all these tools. If you have any other ideas, if you have any recommendations, if you want to contribute to these implementations, please contact us. I will put again in the chat, or perhaps I have a slide. No, I don't have it, but I will put in the chat the email, and if you have ideas or recommendations, you are more than welcome to contact us, and then we can work together and consider the implementation of these tools. Are there any other comments or feedback? I'm checking the chat, and if they are raised, there is a Tsukasa, you want to take the floor, or do you want me to read what is in the chat?
Thank you very much, Virginie. My name is Tsukasa from Japan, JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency. So my comment, it's not a question. Yeah, actually, it's a comment, actually a question, but I just read. It's a comment about the capacity development and awareness building. There are so many national capacity training in domain of UNDAC coordination, which is Interact Rescue and the EMT medical, emergency medical teams. So these are all somehow relevant to CIQ process of affected country. Have this, impact initiative already reached out to likely-minded stakeholders to amplify the impact? So that's a question to the capacity development. Thank you very much.
Well, we are very much keen to contribute and to participate to all these simulation exercise. I remember in the Philippines there was a huge exercise at the airport 2 or 3 years ago, and the Customs Administration and the cross-border agencies were involved in that. So in terms of capacity building, it would be great to strengthen our connection with you. I'm sure that ITU and the work she's doing on the telecommunication code will be happy to contribute as well. So we definitely need to connect and work together. Definitely, and we have to spread the word and work on it.
Thank you very much. So there is no point to wasting this kind of very good effort, and we need to have kind of streamline this effort. One example is we have been having a exercise with the US DMAT and Japan DMAT, and the importation of the medical equipment and this kind of telecommunication was one of the very bottleneck. And if we have this initiative, I would have been able to inform this about them. So this is very good initiative. So we need to know about this. I would like to share this to my colleagues in the medicals and rescues and ANDAC as well. Thank you very much.
Yes, Thank you very much. We had a session this morning on the importation of medicines and medical equipment, and we have a sub-working group that deals with this matter, and we would be very happy to welcome you and to include you in the groups so that you can contribute. And again, we don't want, and we cannot reinvent the wheel. We definitely want to connect the dots between the different initiatives to make sure that all these aspects are considered. And when I attend meetings or when I attend conferences, I mention these exercises, and we try to involve the cross-border agencies in this exercise and simulation exercise. So thank you very much, Sukasa, for that. Yes.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
And that is a very good comment, and what you have mentioned already is very good. And just to see how we are working now on the national emergency telecommunication plans, we have developed the plans for Solomon Islands and for Afghanistan, and we have shared the plans with the UN organizations that are, for example, supporting Afghanistan, so they can see how they can include already their work there, so we don't duplicate efforts, don't have, as mentioned, so many national initiatives and plans. So in the to have all the ICT component, the telecommunications component in one specific place, we have encouraged these organizations to provide comments and feedback and see how we can cooperate and include already that, so the country already knows what it is. It has a national plan there, and if there is a need to develop specific contingency plans, they can do, because contingency plans are developed for different specific hazards. And so it is a very good opportunity for a global, let's say, global collaboration among all entities working on disaster management. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good discussion and exchange of views. Are there any other comments or questions? I do not see any hands. Okay, then in that case, I would like to thank you very much. We will take action on the points that we have discussed today. As you know, we have a strategy in the IMPACCT working groups and in the IMPACCT working group, and it encompasses this work on this. But we know that we have to strengthen our collaboration, and we have to make sure that cross-border agencies are involved and participate to the simulation exercise or any trainings, etc., etc. So we will take action on this. I'll be in contact with you and we'll see how we can work on this in 2021, so that at the HNPW next year we make progress and we can report back on how these conventions are implemented in the field. So thank you very much. Are there any comments from the panelists that you want to add? I don't see anything. So thank you very much to all the panelists. Thank you to the participants as well. This session is recorded, so we will put it online by the end of the week or early next week. And if you have any questions or any ideas or recommendations, please feel free to contact us anytime. We'd be happy to work with you and answer your questions. Thank you very much to you all. Have a good night for you, Tessa, a good afternoon, a good evening for all those that are online, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Thank you, the speakers. Thank you very much to all for these two sessions today. And we'll reconvene tomorrow with the two other sessions.